Am I the a-hole for not sharing my inheritance with my parents' foster son? I, 35M, recently lost my parents in a tragic and unexpected accident, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything that's happened. My parents were fairly well off, owning a couple of properties and having investments, but they didn't leave a will. So, as their only biological child, everything is legally coming to me once the estate is sorted out by the solicitors. My parents fostered a boy, Ben, 16M, since he was 5. Ben has been part of the family for over a decade, and my parents treated him like their own son. But since he was never adopted or made a legal heir, he's not entitled to any of the inheritance. Ben isn't being left completely out in the cold, though. As a looked-after child, he has an ISA set up in his name by the government, which I understand the government contributes to. My parents also put money into it each year. I don't have access to the exact numbers yet because everything is still being managed by the solicitors, but from what I remember it was around 8-9K per year. This means Ben will have a decent amount of money when he turns 18, plus whatever support he gets from social services in the meantime. Here's where it gets complicated. My girlfriend has gotten quite close to Ben over the years, and she thinks I should share the inheritance with him. She argues that Ben has now lost 2 sets of parents, his biological ones and now my parents, and that it would be the right thing to do. She feels that Ben deserves something more than just his ISA, especially since my parents considered him their son. I understand where she's coming from and I feel for Ben. Losing my parents has been devastating, and I can't imagine what it's like for him to lose another set of parental figures. But at the same time, I'm not sure it's fair to expect me to give up a portion of my inheritance. This money could help secure my future, enable me to buy a home, invest, or start a family. I don't have access to the inheritance yet, but when everything is finalized, it will legally belong to me. I'm torn between what I'm being told is the right thing and what I feel is fair. I've always been polite with Ben, but we never really bonded, especially since I was already an adult and living away when he came into the family. So, am I the a-hole for not planning to share my inheritance with my parents' foster son? I feel guilty, but I also think I have the right to keep what's legally mine. Additional context from OP. I don't know why they hadn't set up a will, I just don't think they were expecting to die, so put it off. Also, he does have everything they left him in the ISA, which would be around 100K when he's 18. So it isn't like he's being left with nothing. Firstly, thank you for your perspective. I understand where you're coming from, and I haven't made any full decision yet. I don't even have access to the money yet. But just to clarify your point about also plan to send him back to the system. He was never out the system and I don't have the power to take him out of it. I'm not a qualified foster parent. He couldn't come to live with me even if and he wanted that. It would be different legally if my parents adopted him, he could come to live with me. But he is still in foster care. Also, in my country, people's parents don't pay for their child's university. Mainly because student loans here are far less predatory than in a country like the US. But if he did want to pay for university rather than get student loans, then his ISA money would cover it with tens of thousands still left. Ben's, biological parents aren't dead, he sees them every Wednesday, lol. Ben isn't eligible for adoption, he was long-term matched with my parents. They didn't have a will. But also, every foster child is automatically set up a ISA here in England, which they get access to when they turn 18. Some money is put in it each week automatically by the government. My parents just added extra to it on top of what is already put in. As he's a LAC, I don't have any choice in his housing or anything now. It's all up to his social worker. I'm not a qualified foster carer, so I can't even take him in if that's what I wanted. No, Ben wasn't temporary. This is going to be kind of confusing to Americans reading this, but we have a different foster system over here in England. He was long-term matched with my parents, which means he was a permanent member of the family. He wasn't ever going to be reunified with his biological parents, but he was not eligible to be adopted. Like I said, he was long-term matched with them, which means he would have stayed with them until he was 18. Honestly, I don't know if they would have adopted him or not. My parents went purposefully into fostering rather than adoption, which would have been an option for them if they had wanted it. Also, even if I did choose not to give him anything extra, he isn't being left with nothing. He'll have around £100,000 for himself in a few years' time, which is 4x the average yearly wage where I live. I can't take him in, he's a LAC, and I am not a qualified foster carer. I could become one, but it will take about a year, in which time he will almost be 18, so it would kind of be pointless. I haven't let go of him, we're staying in contact. Like I said, we weren't that close before, but he is close with my GF. The death only happened a few days ago. You're right in saying I don't want to be a qualified foster carer. That wasn't something I had ever planned or wanted to do. However, I feel like you're saying that in a way to imply that I could take Ben in if I just qualified. But I've already looked into it, and by the time I would qualify, Ben would be months away from being 18. I don't have any desire to foster other children, so I feel like this would be a waste of time and resources, honestly. Update, 1 week later. Hey everyone, it's been a bit of a whirlwind since I first posted, and I wanted to come back with an update. I read through the comments and took a lot of what was said to heart, even the tough love. Some of you made me realize that I was focusing too much on what was legally mine and not enough on what my parents would have wanted and what Ben really needs right now. First, I want to clarify something that I've been thinking about a lot. My parents were amazing people, and they took Ben in because they wanted to give him a stable, loving home. Even though they didn't adopt him, they treated him as their son. So, I've been asking myself, if they were here, what would they want me to do? I had a long talk with my girlfriend, who's been a rock through all this. She's been a lot more involved with Ben, and she helped me see things from a different perspective. I also spoke to the solicitors to get a clearer picture of what my parents had set up for Ben through his ISA and any other resources. After all of this, I've decided that I will continue contributing to Ben's ISA until he turns 18, just like my parents did. But more importantly, I've also set aside a portion of the inheritance in a trust for him. This isn't about giving away half of everything or feeling pressured, it's about doing what feels right for me and, I believe, what would have been right by my parents. I know some of you suggested that I take Ben in, and while I'm not ready to go that far, I've reached out to his social worker to ensure he's getting the support he needs. I've also decided to stay more involved in his life. I realize now that this is about more than just money, it's about making sure he knows he's not alone in the world. To those who pointed out that I sounded cold or indifferent, you're right, I was. But this whole experience has made me reflect on the kind of person I want to be. I'm not just thinking about securing my own future anymore, I'm thinking about how I can honor my parents' legacy by helping Ben build his. Thanks for the wake-up call, everyone. It's still a painful and confusing time, but I'm doing my best to move forward with empathy and compassion. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that family isn't just about blood, it's about showing up for the people who need you, especially when it's hard. Like and follow for more stories.